DDR1. In the year 2000, while everyone was busy realizing the Y2K bug wasn't going to end civilization, DDR1 arrived to save us from something far worse. SDRAM. Before this, opening a program was a meditative experience, mostly because you had to wait forever for the data to actually arrive. DDR stands for double data rate. The big brain move here was that it could transfer data twice per clock cycle, on both the rising and falling edges of the signal. It was the tech equivalent of a warehouse worker suddenly deciding to use both hands to move boxes instead of one. Suddenly, your PC went from a slow crawl to a brisk walk. Back then, having 256 megabytes of RAM meant your PC was a beast. Today, your smart toaster has more memory than that. Technically, DDR1 was a bit of a power hog, pulling 2.5 volts, enough juice to make the sticks double as desktop hand warmers. You could spot it by its 184 pins and a single notch placed almost exactly in the center to stop you from accidentally blowing up your motherboard. With effective speeds topping out at 400 MHz and a 2N prefetch buffer, it could grab 2 chunks of data at once. This was the backbone of the legendary Pentium 4 and AMD Athlon era. But being a pro wasn't cheap. In 2001, a single gigabyte of DDR1 could cost you $100. For that same price today, you can buy enough DDR4 to run 50 Chrome tabs and still have money left for lunch. DDR1 was hot, expensive, and limited, but it was the first time our computers actually started to feel fast. DDR2. In 2003, DDR2 arrived with a bold promise: twice the speed, half the power. It sounds like a great deal until you realize DDR2 had the reaction time of a teenager on a Monday morning. This is the latency problem. While DDR2 could move more data per second, it was actually lazier at starting the job. Think of it this way. For quick, simple tasks, DDR1 actually won. For heavy lifting, DDR2 crushed it. Efficiency improved as voltage dropped to 1.8 volts, and the pin count jumped to 240. The notch was moved slightly off-center, an intentional piece of idiot-proofing to stop people from jamming it into a DDR1 slot and turning their motherboard into an expensive firework. Speeds eventually climbed to 1066 MHz, pushing bandwidth to 8.5 gigabytes per second. We also got 4 N prefetch, meaning the RAM could grab 4 chunks of data per cycle instead of 2. This was the engine behind the legendary Intel Core 2 Duo and the era of Windows Vista, a time of beautiful transparent windows and a lot of "are you sure you want to open this?" pop-ups. Thanks to DDR2, you could finally open more than 3 browser tabs without your PC turning into a decorative brick. Today, DDR2 only exists in the dusty basements of IT departments, sitting right next to the printer that nobody knows how to fix. DDR3. In 2007, Microsoft was busy apologizing for Windows Vista, and the hardware world gave us DDR3, the memory standard that simply refused to die. If your childhood was consumed by the early days of Minecraft or the infinite mountain climbing of Skyrim, your PC was almost certainly breathing through these sticks. Technically, DDR3 was the moment RAM became polite. It dropped the voltage to 1.5 volts, and eventually 1.35 volts for the low-power versions, making it much more efficient than the space heaters that came before it. It kept the 240-pin count, but in keeping with the tradition of annoying PC builders, Microsoft and the manufacturers shifted the notch just enough to ensure your old DDR2 sticks were officially garbage. Under the hood, we saw effective speeds climb to 2,133 MHz. This was thanks to the 8N prefetch buffer, which allowed the RAM to gulp down 8 chunks of data per cycle, and flyby topology. That's just a fancy industry term for a signal layout that reduced noise and kept your system stable while you were trying to find every mod for Skyrim at 3 a.m. DDR3 was the backbone of the Intel Sandy Bridge era. Specifically, the i5 2000 500K and i7 3000 770K. Processors so legendary that there are still people today who treat them like holy relics, refusing to upgrade because it still works fine. Even in 2025, a solid 16 GB kit of DDR3 can still handle 1000 80p gaming and basic tasks. However, if you try to throw a modern 4K video edit at it, the system will respond with the digital equivalent of a long, tired sigh. DDR4 launched in 2014, and honestly, nobody cared. Early DDR4 was expensive, required a whole new motherboard, and was barely faster than the DDR3 everyone already loved. Reviewers called it unnecessary, and gamers treated it like a glorified paperweight. Then, 2017 happened. AMD launched Ryzen, and suddenly, RAM speed became the most important thing in your life. Ryzen CPUs were essentially hungry monsters that lived on fast memory. The faster your DDR4, the better your frame rates. Overnight, DDR4 went from an overpriced luxury to the literal oxygen your PC needed to stay alive. Technically, it was a massive jump. Voltage dropped to 1.2 volts, pins increased to 288, and speeds exploded from 2,133 MHz to 3,600 MHz and beyond. We also got CRC error checking, making the system significantly more stable. By 2020, DDR4 had become the unshakable baseline for every build, and even in 2025, it remains the pragmatic peak for anyone who values stability over expensive hype. It handles 1440p gaming and 4K editing without breaking a sweat, and 32 GB kits are now actually affordable for mere mortals. Just remember, the notch moved again. You cannot jam DDR4 into a DDR5 slot unless you're looking for an excuse to buy a new house after yours burns down. It's the reliable workhorse of the modern era, but its successor is already breathing down its neck. DDR5. In 2021, DDR5 landed like a spaceship from the future. It was built for a new era of AI, 8K video, and people with far too much room on their credit cards. Technically, DDR5 is a masterclass in efficiency. It dropped the voltage to a tiny 1.1 volts, and because the hardware gods love a good prank, it kept the 288 pin count but moved the notch just enough to ensure you can't use your old RAM. Base speeds start at 4,800 MHz, but high-end kits are already screaming toward 10,000 MHz. It's not just fast, it's architecturally superior. The capacities are frankly offensive. You can get 128 gigabytes on a single consumer stick, which is more memory than most people will use in 3 lifetimes. While it slightly improves frame rates in CPU-heavy games, the real magic happens in 3D rendering and heavy multitasking. If you're building a top-tier Ryzen 9 or Intel i9 beast, DDR5 is the play. But if you're just gaming at 1440p, sticking with DDR4 isn't a crime. Your frame rates will be fine, and your bank account will appreciate the mercy. So, there you have it. 25 years of silicon evolution. We went from the 256 megabyte beast sticks of DDR1 to the 128 gigabyte monsters of DDR5. And yet, somehow, Google Chrome still finds a way to eat every last bit of it. I'm curious, what's the total amount of RAM in your system right now? Are you an 8 gigabyte minimalist or a 128 gigabyte overachiever? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If you found this trip through the memory lanes helpful, hit the like button and subscribe. It's the only way I can keep justifying spending my weekends explaining why one piece of green plastic is faster than another.